I stopped opening the curtains. It started with one morning, just one, where the light felt too sharp. Then it became every morning. The days folded into each other like blank pages. I didn't shower, didn't brush my hair, didn't answer texts, didn't eat unless Clover stared me down long enough. Even then it was just dry toast and coffee gone cold. I thought I was beyond this kind of numbness, thought the fire in episode 2 would carry me into some righteous next chapter, but it didn't. It left me scorched and quiet. I had nightmares, not the cinematic kind, no blood, no chase, just scenes from my childhood, slightly wrong. Me at a birthday party, watching Marissa blow out my candles. Me walking into the kitchen to see my mother whispering with a banker, then slamming a drawer shut when I appeared. Me finding Dad asleep in his chair, mouth open, hands twitching, and no one else in the house. Marissa's voice echoing in the hallway like a ghost. She always folds. I started sleeping on the couch. My bed felt too clean, too separate from the dirt of it all. One night I woke up with a start, drenched in sweat, Clover pawing at my chest like she could sense I was drowning on the inside. I couldn't breathe. Sat up, stared at the wall, and in that still, awful moment I thought, what if this is who I am now? Not the strong one, not the survivor, just the girl who finally broke. At 3:19 a.m. I opened my laptop. Not for comfort, for control. I started typing out my own will. No assets to divide, no house, no car, just a note. To whoever finds this, I want it known. I didn't lose my mind. I lost my family. There's a difference. I didn't plan to die. I wasn't suicidal. But I needed something to exist. Something written that said, I mattered. That if something happened, someone could read my side. Because no one ever had. The next day, I received an email. No subject line, no body text, just one attachment. File name. Final warning PDF. I hesitated. Clicked. It was an image. A photo of my apartment building, taken from across the street, at night. My living room window was visible. The curtains were shut. But I knew what it meant. We see you. No signature. No IP I could trace. Just a message. Loud and quiet all at once. Stay down, stay silent, or we'll come closer. I should have panicked, but I didn't. I just stared at it. And for the first time in days, I felt something. A slow flicker. Not fear, not sadness, but rage. And not the messy kind from before. Not the screaming in your car, shaking hands, sobbing in a parking lot kind. No, this was different. Clean. Cold. Tactical. I looked at the photo one more time, then deleted it, and whispered out loud, "Fine, let's dance." That afternoon, I found Dad's old box in my closet, the one I'd almost thrown out a year ago. Inside was a photo of us at my high school graduation. I was smiling. He was pale, thin, his eyes already distant from the chemo, but his hand was on my back. Not Marissa's. Mine. On the back he'd written, "You'll make it through all of it. You always do." I ran my thumb over those words, felt something harden inside me. A decision. A beginning. Not of healing, not yet. Of something sharper. Because if they wanted silence, I would give them story. And if they thought I was alone, they were about to learn. I have claws, and I've been sharpening them in the dark. I started carrying a pen again, not for writing down thoughts or feelings. Those were dangerous now. No, I carried it like a weapon, tucked into my coat pocket, my purse, even the sleeve of my sweater. A small thing, but pointed. Like me. Something cracked open the night I wrote my will, not in a sad way, in a structural way, like realizing the walls were already broken, and you'd been tiptoeing around them, pretending you still lived in a house. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror. Not to fix anything, just to look at what they left behind. The woman they'd underestimated, talked over, talked about, eyes rimmed red, hair unwashed, but still standing. And under all the mess, all the exhaustion, there was something harder now, something finished with apologies. I sat on the floor of my living room, stacks of papers circling me like a fortress, journal pages, court copies, bank statements, letters, and I saw it all differently now, not like proof of my suffering, but like materials, to build something, to launch something, to fight. Because if I couldn't undo what they did, I could make damn sure they never did it again. I wrote one sentence at the top of a yellow legal pad. You don't have to be loud to be dangerous. Then I made a list. Not of revenge ideas. I'm not that theatrical. A list of steps. Legal, measured, permanent. Step 1. Consult a different attorney. One with no ties to my family, no handshakes with local judges. Step 2. Back up every document, every photo, every letter. 3 hard drives, 1 locked safe, 1 off-site. Step 3. Revisit the recorded phone call with Mum. Flag the moment she admitted to hiding things for my own good. Step 4. Check the estate registry, again, because something still didn't add up. I texted the only person I half trusted, Gillian, a lawyer I'd met at a women's advocacy workshop 2 years ago. Smart, no nonsense, specialized in inheritance manipulation and fiduciary abuse. I didn't explain everything. Just sent her the file name, Power of Attorney Conflict, 2009 PDF. She replied within an hour. Delaney, that document's not just shady, it's invalid in 3 states. Let's talk. We met in a coffee shop where the staff didn't smile too much, my kind of place. She brought a binder. I brought a flash drive. I can't promise a miracle, she said, but if half of this holds up, they're in trouble. I asked her what kind of trouble. She paused. Let's just say, if someone forced a dying man to sign something under medication and then funneled assets before probate, that's not just unethical, that's criminal. My throat went dry, but my hands didn't shake. Not this time, because I wasn't the scared daughter anymore. I was the witness, and now I had the floor. That night I dreamed of my father, but not sick, not frail, just sitting on the porch of our old house, sunlight in his hair, book in hand, Clover at his feet. He didn't speak, just nodded once, like he saw me, all of me, and then he smiled, that kind of smile that says, finally. I woke up with an ache in my chest, not from grief, from readiness, because when you've spent your whole life being the background character, stepping into the spotlight doesn't feel glamorous. It feels dangerous, exposed, loud in ways you were taught to never be. But I wasn't stepping into the light to be seen. I was stepping in to cast a shadow. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not Gillian, not Ruth, not even the voice in my head that always second-guessed me. I just did it, step by step. No flair, no drama, just action. Because the most dangerous people aren't the loud ones. They're the ones who stop asking permission. I started with the records. 3 external hard drives, 1 encrypted cloud vault. Every photo of the forged document, every voice recording, every letter between Marissa and my mother, every transfer that smelled wrong. I scanned it all like I was archiving my own war crimes, except I wasn't the criminal. I was the historian, and this was a trail no one would be able to rewrite again. Next, I visited the bank. Not ours. 1 3 towns over, where nobody knew my face. I opened a new account. Different name on the paper. D.L. Grayson, a name I used to sign stories in college, when I didn't want my mother knowing what I was writing about. I moved the last of my savings there. It wasn't much, but it was mine, every dollar, and no one could touch it. Then I hired him. a private investigator. Nothing flashy, no trench coat, no rear-view mirror stakeouts, just a quiet middle-aged man named Lawrence who used to work white-collar fraud cases. He wore khakis and said "ma'am" too much, but his eyes, sharp still. He asked me one question after reading the files. "Do you want this to go away or blow up?" I stared at him, then smiled. Both. Within a week, he'd sent me 3 PDFs, each one colder than the last. The first was a ledger, transfers from a shared family account to a private LLC Marissa had formed, months before Dad passed. The second? A notarized deed of sale for a cabin I didn't even know we'd owned, sold 2 weeks after Dad's final hospitalization, signed, allegedly, by him, witnessed by Mom. The third? An internal memo from the medical billing company, a quiet warning about questionable authorization signatures. Everything screamed one word: fraud. I stared at the documents, felt this strange split in my chest, half of me shaking, the other half thrilled, because the thing about grief is, it numbs you. But this made me feel alive, not happy, not proud, just awake, and maybe that was enough. I called Gillian the next day, told her I wanted to file, not just challenge the will, expose the whole damn system, the signatures, the asset transfers, the abuse of power of attorney when Dad was sedated. "I want this on record," I said. "If I lose, I lose. But I want the lie to live in public." She didn't say much, just paused. Then, "Delaney, you're not the same woman who walked into my office 2 weeks ago." I exhaled. Good. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the only clean glass in the apartment. No wine, just water. No music. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the tick of the second hand on the wall. And I whispered, "You didn't raise a good girl. You raised a quiet one. And now she's not quiet anymore." They taught me silence was survival, but they forgot something. Silence is also strategy. And mine was just getting started. The message came on a Wednesday, 10:42 p.m. Just as I was turning off the lamp. "I worked with your father. I know what happened. If you want answers, meet me." There was an address. Just that. No name, no signature. Just the shape of a trap or a torch. I stared at it for a long time. Clover shifted in her sleep. The apartment was quiet, soft, safe. But I knew I had to go. Because some silences don't protect you. They bury you. The cafe sat on the edge of the city, tucked behind a closed flower shop and a laundromat that hadn't worked since the Obama years. Inside, empty booths, flickering lights, a scent of burned coffee and old books. I wore all black. Didn't order anything. Just waited. At 11:06, a woman walked in. Mid-50s. Tired eyes. Scrubs beneath her coat. No makeup, no smile. She looked at me once, nodded, then slid into the booth across from mine. "I'm Ellen," she said. "I was your dad's night nurse." The world tipped sideways. I hadn't heard his name said like that. Softly, kindly, in months. She reached into her bag, pulled out a worn notebook. Technically, I shouldn't have this. But technically, a lot of things shouldn't have happened. She flipped to a page dated February 2nd. A scribbled note. "Delaney keeps calling, says she's coming home. They keep unplugging the phone." Another. He said, "She deserves the house, not Marissa." They told him it was already done. I didn't blink, didn't cry, just listened. Page after page. Accounts of my father, drugged and fading, trying to talk, trying to write, trying to reach me, and being silenced, over and over and over. "They said it was for his peace," Ellen said bitterly, "but he was lucid more than they wanted to admit. She looked at me. I got fired for letting him call your number. They said I broke protocol, but I think I just made things inconvenient. My hands curled into fists beneath the table. I felt it again. Not rage, not sorrow. Just that still, searing quiet, the one that settles when the truth is finally undeniable. There's one more thing, Ellen said. She reached into her coat, pulled out a thumb drive. I copied the patient logs before they wiped the system. You didn't hear that from me. I took it, felt the plastic burn cold in my hand. She stood. I kept it for years, didn't know why, until now. She paused before leaving. Your dad loved you so much. He never stopped talking about you. I think that's why they hated it. Then she was gone. I sat there long after she left, thumb drive in one hand, notebook pressed against my ribs, trying to process what it meant, that Marissa hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen my goodbye, stolen my chance to say I loved him, to sit beside him, to let him die knowing I was there. And my mother? She'd let it happen, maybe even orchestrated it. The grief didn't hit like a wave. It hit like a hammer, one precise crack, then another and another, until I couldn't tell what was breaking anymore, the past, the memory, or me. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I uploaded the drive. File after file, timestamps, medication logs, missed call records, signed approvals. One entry stood out. Request for palliative DNR override. Approved by M. Ellis, my mother. Not a doctor, not a nurse, but she'd approved something that should have taken a full care team, and no one stopped her, because no one cared, because they assumed I wouldn't care, because they'd already written me out of the script. I stared at the screen until sunrise, then I wrote one sentence in my journal. They didn't just rob the dead, they erased the living. But now, I was writing myself back in, line by line, scene by scene, and they couldn't stop me anymore. It started with a DM, Instagram, from someone named Caitlin, May. Her profile was mostly quotes in cursive fonts and filtered coffee shots, but the name, I recognized it. She'd gone to school with Marissa. They used to post birthday dinners, spa days, bestie since braces kind of photos. But this message wasn't like that. Hey Delaney, I probably shouldn't reach out, but I've been watching what's happening, and I know things. If you want to talk, really talk, I'm here. My first instinct? Delete, block, run. But something held me, because sometimes the devil doesn't knock. She texts. I responded 4 hours later, short, cautious. What do you mean you know things? The reply came fast. Stuff I wasn't supposed to see, messages, calls, conversations about your dad before he passed. I stayed quiet because I didn't think it was my business. But now, I'm not so sure. She offered to meet, said she didn't want it in writing. Again, that flicker of paranoia. But by now, paranoia felt like a survival instinct. I picked a neutral spot. Public, well lit, security cameras. She showed up in leggings and a denim jacket, looking like every girl who ever side-eyed me in the hallways of my youth. But her eyes were jittery. Her hands kept fidgeting with the strap of her purse. She sat down, leaned in. I don't want drama, she started. I didn't speak. I just think, you should know, Marissa's been using your name. That got my attention. She pulled out her phone, scrolled, clicked, turned the screen to me. A screenshot of a donation receipt, Delaney Hope Foundation, in honor of our beloved father. Amount, $8,200. Sender, Marissa Ellis. I felt my stomach tighten. That's not real, I said quietly. Caitlin nodded. It's not even registered. She made the website with a template. Looks legit. but she's been collecting money using your name." I stared at the screen. It felt surreal. Not just the fraud, but the audacity. Like, she'd turned my grief into a brand, a charity, for attention, for tax purposes, or maybe just to twist the knife one more turn. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Her mouth opened, then paused. "That's a good question," she admitted. "I guess. I thought maybe I'd feel better." She laughed, but it wasn't funny. "I used to think Marissa was the strong one. She always knew how to get what she wanted. But now, I think she's just practiced." I didn't smile, didn't thank her, because something still felt off. When I got home, I searched Caitlin's socials again. Her last photo, 3 weeks ago, tagging Marissa. "Brunch with my soulmate." The caption was deleted now, but the internet never forgets. I dug deeper. A Pinterest board still titled Marissa's Wedding, Ideas. An Amazon wish list shared with a joint account, M&K Holiday Plans. They weren't old friends, they were current. Maybe not besties, but not strangers either. And suddenly, I knew. Caitlin hadn't come to warn me. She came to test the water, to see how much I knew, what I'd found, how close I was to the fire. I closed my laptop, stared at the ceiling, the weight of it all pressed down like a second spine. But this time, I didn't fall apart. I reached for my phone, dialed Jillian, told her everything, and then I said the one sentence I'd been circling for weeks: "I want to go public." Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Yes, but I want to control the story. Not just react to theirs." "Understood." She paused. "We'll draft something together. Something they can't twist." I felt a calm settle over me, like steel cooling in a mold, because I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't the mistake, or the afterthought, or the secret shame. I was the story, and I was about to take the mic. I didn't write it like a blog. I wrote it like a eulogy for the version of me they buried, the quiet daughter, the forgotten child, the one who waited her whole life for permission to speak. She was gone now, and I wasn't writing for sympathy. I was writing for record. I titled it, "The Quietest Ones Remember Everything." No names, no accusations, just facts, a timeline. Of a daughter calling and being ignored. Of a father Yasser sedated while decisions were signed around him. Of a foundation created in her name without her knowing. Of love withheld and rewritten like a memo. It read like a whisper in a courtroom, but every line held teeth. I posted it anonymously. But not anonymously. People who knew, knew. I shared it on 2 survivor forums, 1 grief blog, and a private subreddit for daughters erased from estates. By noon, it had 600 comments. By evening, it had reached 30,000 views. By the end of the week, a journalist emailed me. "I think I know who you are, and I think your story matters. Would you be willing to speak on record?" I didn't answer right away, because this wasn't about going viral. It was about going visible. There's a difference. The next day, my mother called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. "Delaney, sweetheart, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is hurting a lot of people. Your sister's in tears. We thought you were over this." Over. As if grief was a cold I should have shaken off. She never said sorry, not once, not even a lie about it, just guilt, disguised as concern, a manipulation wrapped in lace. I played the message twice, then saved it, labeled it, "When they realize you're not afraid anymore." At 2 a.m., my phone lit up. A text from Marissa. "You really want to make this ugly?" I stared at it, felt the old ache, the old urge to explain myself, to justify, to defend, but it was gone now. That reflex, dead and buried. So I wrote back, "You already made it ugly. I'm just finally turning on the lights." and I put my phone down. The journalist followed up the next morning. She said her name was Reagan, mid-30s, investigative reporter, had covered inheritance disputes and domestic gaslighting cases. She didn't want clickbait, she wanted truth. I met her in a bookstore cafe, neutral ground. I brought a printout of the document trail, voice transcripts, the email from Caitlin, photos of the foundation website. She listened, didn't interrupt, didn't blink. When I finished, she said, "Most people bury this kind of story. You're lighting it on fire." I looked at her and smiled, just a little. "Yeah," I said. "But I'm doing it in silk. Because rage is loud. But vengeance is dressed for dinner, and I had just taken my seat at the table. The article went live 5 days later. Not national, not flashy, just local digital media. But it was enough. The headline, "Silence Daughter Speaks, When Grief Meets Inheritance, Who Gets the Last Word?" My name was changed, details blurred, but they knew. Oh, they knew. That night, my mother texted again. One word, "Why?" And for the first time in months, I replied, "Because I remember everything, and now so does everyone else." I didn't go looking for it. I was just organizing, putting files into folders, tidying the chaos, pretending control tasted like clarity. And then I saw it. A small scan from the estate folder, a document I'd skipped before because the print was smudged. It was a mortgage deed, issued 3 months before Dad died, for a property I didn't recognize. Amount, $240,000. Borrower, Martin Ellis. Signature, his. Witnessed by Margaret Ellis. But there was a problem. Dad wasn't living at that address then. He was in hospice, hooked to IVs, barely speaking, unable to sign anything. I checked the date again. It was a day I remembered, because it was the last time I saw him lucid, the day I came by with soup he barely tasted, the day he whispered, "Don't let them push you out." He hadn't even held a pen that day. So how the hell did he sign a mortgage? I scanned the signature, opened an old birthday card he'd written me, the last one, from 2 years earlier, compared the handwriting. No match. One loopy, one rigid, one filled with that odd softness only my dad had. The other, empty, mechanical. A lie in ink. I felt it in my spine. They hadn't just tricked him. They faked him. I called Lawrence, my investigator, told him to look deeper into that address. Within 2 hours, he called back. "You're not gonna like this," he warned. "It's a house your mom bought, flipped and sold 6 months later, all under your dad's name. They took out a mortgage, did the renovations, sold at $180K profit, and funneled the money into a shell account." My throat went dry. They used my dying father as a money mule? Worse, he said. They used his ghost. The words settled into me like rust. Suddenly, it wasn't about inheritance anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about dignity. They'd taken his last coherent days, his name, his identity, and turned it into a receipt, a check, a transaction. I found myself back in the closet, the old one, where I'd hidden all the grief, all the boxes, all the birthday cards I never opened. I pulled out his sweater, the one he wore when we built the porch swing. Still smelled like cedar and coffee grounds. I sat on the floor, held it, and for the first time since the article went live, I wept. Not because they'd hurt me, but because they'd erased him. And I hadn't stopped them. But when the crying passed, a new fire remained. Not chaotic, not performative, but steady, like the kind they used to light under kettles before battle, boiling, silent, relentless. I got up, washed my face, sat at my desk, and wrote 3 names on a piece of paper: Marissa Ellis, Margaret Ellis, D.L. Grayson, one by one. Then I circled the last one, not because she was innocent, but because she was the only one who hadn't lied, the only one still standing, still speaking, still fighting. I called Gillian again. "I want to file for forgery," I said. She didn't ask for proof. She knew by now. When I said it, I meant it. "This could go criminal," she warned. "I'm counting on it," I replied. Because this wasn't a story anymore. It was a record, and someone had to write it, before they erased that, too. The courthouse was colder than I remembered. Everything grey, walls, sky, the suit I wore. Even the floor tiles looked like they'd been washed in ash. I held the folder tighter than I needed to. It wasn't nerves. It was finality. This was the last piece, the last form. The last box I had to check before the storm officially changed direction. We were filing for forgery, estate fraud, exploitation of a medically incapacitated elder, and I wasn't shaking anymore. Gillian handled the logistics. I just stood there, coat still on, eyes fixed on the wall clock. 9:14 a.m. I remembered that same clock from when I was 14. We'd come here for a parking dispute my dad refused to back down on. He'd told the clerk, "I don't mind paying. I mind pretending I was wrong." God, I missed him. Not the way he died, but the way he stood, even when it didn't matter. The woman behind the desk stamped the documents. Slide, thump side. It should have felt victorious. It didn't. It felt like cement setting around the last bones of a broken house. I wasn't fighting to win anymore. I was fighting to finish. When we walked out, the sun hit me like a dare. Bright, honest, like it was asking, "Now what?" I didn't answer. Just pulled my scarf tighter and walked to the car in silence, because I'd finally done it. The big, terrible thing, and nothing about it felt loud. Only done. Later that night, I found myself folding laundry with the lights off. Just the glow of the street lamp through the window. Clover curled at my feet, and I remembered something tiny, so small I'd buried it. A summer evening, maybe 10 years old, sitting on the back steps while Dad smoked his one secret cigarette. He didn't know I saw, or maybe he did. He said, low and tired, "There's no such thing as a clean win, kiddo. There's just what you can live with, and what won't let you sleep." I hadn't understood it then. I did now. Because this wasn't clean. It was honest. And I could sleep with that. That night, I dreamed in full color. The porch, the swing, the sound of his humming while sanding the railings. No ghosts, no guilt. Just presence, the kind that doesn't haunt. It holds. In the morning, I made black coffee and sat by the window, opened my notebook, wrote one line. This isn't justice. This is just the record finally catching up. Then I closed the book and started drafting my final letter, not for the court, not for the press, but for her, my sister. Not to scream, just to confirm. I was no longer standing in the fire. I was the fire. I didn't write it to hurt her. I wrote it because the truth deserved an envelope. Neat. Sealed. Stamped with finality. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't poetic. It was evidence. Just lined up. One item at a time. Like a ledger of betrayal. Like an obituary for the version of us I used to believe in. I printed everything. Not the dramatics, the details. The deed of the cabin sold under Dad's name. The emails Marissa thought she deleted, where she forwarded his medical records to their financial advisor. A week before he lost consciousness. The scanned signature that didn't match a single sample from the last 5 years of his handwriting. The photos of the forged foundation donation pages, using my name and image. I printed the screenshot of Caitlin's message. The PayPal trail. The asset funnel into a dummy LLC. And at the very end, I wrote a single line in my own handwriting. Now you know that I know. That's all. No threats, no demands, just the unbearable weight of exposure. I mailed it through certified post, to her house, not our mother's. Let her open it alone. Let her hands shake. Let her feel that first drop of panic, the kind I drowned in for years. I didn't hope for guilt. Guilt would be too kind. I just wanted silence, The silence of a cornered liar, and the sound of her story collapsing in her own hands. The voicemail came 36 hours later. Blocked number, private line. I played it once, then twice. Marissa's voice, tight and high, like someone trying to hold composure inside a burning building. Delaney, wow. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, I always knew you were dramatic, but this, digging through old files, twisting things into your own little narrative. She laughed. Short, ugly. You don't know what you're doing. You're tearing this family apart. Over what? Some old money and a name on a house? Then a pause. Dad would be ashamed of you. And finally, her last words. This won't end how you think it will. Click. That was it. I stared at my phone for a long time. Not angry, not hurt, just tired. Tired of her trying to write my ending. Tired of her turning Dad into a weapon. Tired of her pretending this was about me. It wasn't. It was about the lie she built, and how I refused to sleep under its roof any longer. I deleted the voicemail. Didn't save it, didn't replay it, because it wasn't a moment worth preserving. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a defense. It was the sound of a woman realizing she had lost control of the narrative. And that's all it ever was for her, wasn't it? Control, not love, not truth, not grief, just power. And now she didn't have it. I did. But I didn't want to use it. I just wanted to leave. That night I sat on the floor again. Same spot, same window. Clover curled beside me, and I realized I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need her to pay. I just needed to stop paying for her sins. So I lit a candle, not as ritual, not as drama, just as warmth, and whispered to the dark, I don't need your apology. I need you out of my story. Then I blew it out, and that chapter ended, without ceremony, without her. She asked to meet. The message was short. No greetings, no apologies. Come to the house. One last talk. The house. Not our house. Not anymore. Just an echo of something that used to pretend it was home. I said yes. Not to reconcile, not to rage, just to witness what silence had done to her. And maybe, finally, to let go of the ghost of the girl who used to beg for her sister's love like it was oxygen. I drove without music. The roads were damp from last night's rain. The sky was clean and colorless. The house looked smaller now, crisper, too sharp, like something that had been cut out of a memory and pasted into reality. There was a for sale sign out front, half tilted, mocking. I walked up the porch I used to scrub every June. The wood creaked the same way it always did. Third plank from the left, still loose. She opened the door before I could knock, and for a second, I saw her. Not the woman who stole, not the liar or the manipulator, just my sister. The girl who used to braid my hair with ribbon. The one who stayed up late watching late-night cartoons when Dad worked third shift. The one who once cried when I broke my collarbone. But that girl was dead, and this woman was the one who buried her. Delaney, she said. Flat. Careful. Like stepping onto thin ice. I nodded. Marissa. We didn't hug. She stepped aside, let me in. The inside was hollow. Furniture gone. Pictures removed. Echoes louder than ever. Only the scent of lemon cleaner remained. Too sharp, like they were trying to scrub something out of the walls. But you can't bleach memory. It stains deeper than paint. We sat in the living room, on folding chairs. No couch, no coffee table, just two women on opposite ends of a broken story. She spoke first. You didn't have to do this. Her voice was softer now, practiced, like she'd rehearsed it on the drive over. I didn't reply. She folded her hands, tried again. I know things got messy, but you made it public. You turned this into something ugly. I blinked slowly. Let the silence stretch. Because it wasn't me who turned anything ugly. It was just finally ugly in the open. I never meant to hurt you, she added, quieter. That was when I finally looked at her. Really looked. There was a tremble at the corner of her mouth, a twitch in her fingers. But the eyes? Still hard, still calculating. This wasn't remorse. It was strategy. She was performing grief again, the version that didn't come with consequences. I don't need you to mean it, I said softly. I just need you to know that I saw it. Her face cracked for half a second. The mask slipped. I leaned forward. You forged Dad's name. You sold his memory. You weaponized my absence. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Sometimes truth is louder in a whisper. She swallowed. I thought I was doing what was best for him. No, I said. You were doing what was best for you, and you didn't think anyone would ever check. I stood, walked to the wall where our old family portrait used to hang. Now, just a faint square of cleaner paint. A blank space. Perfect. I'm not here to fight you, I said without turning around. I'm here to leave you behind. She stood too. Delaney, wait. I turned. Sharp. Still. No. You made me your shadow for decades. Every time I grieved, you called it overreacting. Every time I questioned, you called it bitterness. Every time I left, you pretended I was the one who abandoned you. I paused and let the weight drop. But now, you're going to have to live in my shadow. The silence between us wasn't tense. It was final, like the last page of a book closing in slow motion. I walked to the front door. She didn't follow, didn't beg, didn't confess, because she couldn't, because she never would. I stepped outside, breathed in. The air was cold, unforgiving, but it was mine. I didn't look back, not even once, because I wasn't hers anymore. And she was never really mine. It unraveled fast, faster than even I expected. 3 days after our meeting, the district court froze the house. Not seized, not yet, but under protective audit. Every financial move made in Dad's name during his final year was under review. The bank statements, the mortgages, the charity, all red flagged. And suddenly, Marissa's carefully built image, the perfect daughter, the grieving caretaker, cracked. Not in public yet, but behind the scenes, it was collapsing like wet drywall. Gillian called me daily with updates. IRS is asking questions. Her lawyer's panicking. Looks like your mother signed off on most of it. That last part, it hurt more than I admitted, because part of me, the part that still wanted someone to have been tricked, misled, hoped Mom was just naive. But no, she was involved, willingly, knowingly. Gillian said the documents had her signature, not shaky, not coerced, neat, intentional, like she believed in what they were doing, or worse, like she believed I deserved to be erased. A former friend of the family emailed me, someone who used to send birthday cards. She said, I always wondered why you weren't mentioned in the memorial. I'm sorry I didn't ask sooner. I'm sorry I believed her version first. I didn't reply, not because I was ungrateful, but because the apology came with the undertone of, you should have spoken up sooner, as if silence was a choice I made and not a condition I was raised in. The house went into contingency review, meaning they couldn't sell it, they couldn't rent it, they couldn't even change the locks without alerting the state. The foundation website got reported for fraud and was taken offline. And Marissa? She filed a counterclaim, tried to sue me for defamation, but her case was built on sand. And her lawyer? He dropped her before the hearing even got scheduled, publicly, with a statement. We've decided not to continue representation due to conflict of interest and newly surfaced documentation. Translation? She was radioactive. I watched it all like a distant storm. Flickering, loud, but far enough not to reach me. I didn't feel joy, not the kind they write about in revenge stories. It was quieter, heavier, like finally putting down a bag of bricks you didn't realize you'd been carrying. One morning, I opened the drawer I hadn't touched in months, the one with old receipts, medical bills, insurance forms, a copy of Dad's will, unsigned, unwitnessed, never filed. I picked up a sticky note buried in the mess, his handwriting. Porch, reseal in spring, sand first. I smiled. God. Even dying, he was thinking about the house, about holding things together. And just like that, I remembered a moment I hadn't thought of in years, age 13, sitting on the porch with him, watching cars roll by. He'd asked me if I ever felt invisible. I nodded. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe invisibility is just armor that hasn't figured out it's a weapon yet." I didn't understand it then. I do now. He was trying to tell me the things they tried to bury in me were the very things that would save me. And now, here I was, visible, still scarred, still carrying ash in my lungs, but real. Not their version, not their rewrite, mine. I hadn't been to his grave in over a year, not since the funeral, not since the rose petals stuck to my heel, and Marissa whispered to someone that I was being too emotional for someone who barely showed up at the end. That day, I walked away before the casket even lowered, because it didn't feel like his goodbye. It felt like theirs, their version of him, their filtered grief, like they wanted to bury the guilt right along with the man they manipulated. So I stayed away. Until now. The cemetery was quiet, mid-morning, clouds low, the kind of sky that makes everything feel heavier, like the air is waiting. I brought no flowers, no photo, no candle, just a manila envelope. Inside, the last report, final court statement, fraud confirmation, audit closure. No more lawsuits, no more disputes, just the truth. On paper. His name was etched in stone. Still simple, still unadorned. Just Martin Ellis. Loving father. Gentle hands. 1956, 2023. I stood in front of it for a long time. Hands in my coat pockets. Breath tight. No script. No speech. Just him. And me. Finally I knelt. Ran my fingers over the etched letters. Felt the grooves like braille. And whispered, "They tried to turn you into a transaction, Dad, but I didn't let them." The wind shifted. A branch creaked behind me. I took the envelope, tucked it into the soil just beneath the plaque, pressed it down. Firm. Final. "This is yours," I said. "You earned your rest, and now I get mine too." I sat there a while, long enough for my legs to ache, long enough to feel something leave me, slow and unceremonious. Not joy, not even peace, but permission. To stop holding it all. To stop waiting for someone else to tell the story right, because I already had. And I'd told it loud enough that the silence couldn't swallow it again. As I stood to leave, I looked back one more time. I didn't say goodbye, just nodded, like I was seeing him again, not as the man they weaponized, but as the man who once taught me how to stand on my own porch and not flinch when someone tried to shake the foundation. And this time I walked away, not because I was broken, but because I was whole enough to leave. It's been 6 months. The leaves have turned. The noise has faded. And I'm no longer waiting for a knock at the door that never comes. I moved 3 hours north, not far enough to disappear, just far enough to begin. The place I live now is small, 1 bedroom, no porch, no memories sewn into the floorboards. But I chose every single thing in it. The pale green lamp, the thrifted bookshelf, the soft indigo blanket that Clover refuses to sleep without. None of it matches, and that's exactly the point. It doesn't have to look like a life anyone else understands. It just has to feel like mine. The paperwork went through 2 weeks ago. It's official now. Delaney L. Grayson. No more Ellis, No more shared name with women who made me into a villain in their story. Grayson was Dad's mother's maiden name, a woman I never met, but he used to say she was the one who taught him how to tell the truth without blinking. I like the weight of it. Grayson, gray, stone, solid, no polish, just truth. I still write, mostly at night. Still journal in voice memos when the silence gets too loud. Still make my coffee the way he did. Strong, too bitter. And some nights when it rains, I take out the porch swing drawing and pin it to the fridge like a prayer I've stopped needing answered. It's not about building it anymore. It's about remembering that it once felt possible to build something solid, even on rotten soil. People ask if I won, sometimes quietly, sometimes out loud. I never know how to answer that, because the truth is, I didn't win. But I survived, and some days that feels like the most dangerous kind of victory. I've stopped checking their names online, stopped wondering who still believes them, stopped replaying what I could have said in that final conversation, because none of that will change the fact that I spoke up, not for revenge, but for record, so that when the fire dies down, the ashes will still know who started the blaze. Tonight, I sit by the window again, Clover curled beside me, blanket tucked around my legs, rain ticking softly against the pane. I open the recorder, press the red button, and speak just to myself. They crowned themselves with lies. I crowned myself with truth, and yes, the thorns cut, but they were mine, and I wear them now, not as punishment, but as proof. Click. Done. No send button, no audience, just a final page, sealed in my own voice. I look out the window, and for once, the sky doesn't feel like it's pressing down. It feels open, like I could start again, and maybe I already have.